Parents put me up for adoption as a kid because I was a boy. Now they contacted me after 20 years asking for money to fund my sister's education. I am 25M. My story goes back to the time when I was 6, or rather since the time I was born. I'm the third and youngest child of my parents. We were not rich, but my parents made decent money to raise 3 kids. We lived in a small town in an ancestral house, which saved us a lot of expenses. Grandparents owned a farm that sufficed a significant portion of our kitchen needs. Dad is a truck driver and comes home every 3 to 4 days. Mom works as a waitress. My parents already had 2 daughters when they conceived me. I was the unplanned one, and you know the sentiments of the parents when an unplanned child pops up. Obviously, I didn't know about all this as a kid. But as I grew up, I started understanding these terms in bits and pieces, and it wasn't pleasant to know that I'm unwanted. My parents wanted to get rid of me, but the doctor advised against it because it could have led to some major health concerns for my mother. My parents, especially my mother, wanted a girl. Her reason was very simple. She wanted me to use the discarded clothes of my elder siblings so that she didn't have to buy new clothes for me. My 2 elder sisters had a year of age gap, so they pretty much had the same sized clothes interchangeably. It was fun for them. However, when I was born as a boy, my parents were disappointed. They hated my guts. They dressed me in girls' clothes and even sent me to school with my sister's discarded uniform. It was just so embarrassing for me as a kid. Though I was very small at that time, I still have a blurred memory of how I was being bullied for wearing a girl's uniform and long hair. If I even complained about it, all I got was a thrashing from my mom. I grew up hearing nothing but abuse and harsh words from my parents, most of which I didn't use to understand then, and when I understood, I hated my parents. Dad was still better than Mom, but he used to be away for most of the days and was flaky in nature. On some days, I thought he was neutral between all 3 of us, and on some days he behaved as evil as Mom, if not more. I won't say I was a saint kid. I used to revolt when I started understanding their biases towards me and my sisters. They always got the best of everything and I got their leftovers. So I started being evil to them because as a kid I held them responsible for my misery. Yes, I was grounded for my actions, sometimes quite severely. I had to make my own breakfast and was left without dinner on many occasions. Understand the pleas of a 6-year-old going through this. There was one incident that I remember quite vividly, and I think that was the game changer of my life. That day or that week, I don't remember exactly, I was being severely bullied in the playground for dressing up like a girl. I came home and found that Mom had brought some new clothes for my sisters for the holidays, and bam. I took a pair of scissors and cut them into confetti. I know I was wicked and I'm not proud of what I did, but I was 6, subjected to trolling because of my parents. It came from a place of pain and not evilness. Instead of understanding my pain, my parents considered that to be a sin that deserved the strictest punishment of all. They put me up for adoption. They waited for a month, but there were no takers, and that anger was also unleashed on me. I was constantly told how useless I am, that no one wants to have me. There were times I heard my mom saying I wished I had gender checked, I would have never got him into the world. It haunts me to know that my parents hate me so much, and for a reason that is not in my control. After some time, when there was no response for my adoption, they started talking about this to their friends and relatives. Dad had known someone next town who ran a food van with his wife. They were relatively poorer than us but wanted a child. They were in their late 30s and had been trying for a child for more than a decade, but there was no luck. Dad spoke to them and they readily agreed to adopt me. I remember that moment when Dad broke this news to Mom and my sisters. They were delighted and joyous to get rid of me. Dad also gave a disclaimer that they were poor and that I might never be able to attend school. Mom rolled her eyes and said, "Who cares, just drop him there tomorrow." I stood there numb at the corner, holding the curtain. No matter how much I hated my family, I was scared and hurt having to leave them. I had tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry out loud. They were so happy enjoying the moment that they forgot I was there. When Dad saw me in tears, he came forward, rubbed my back, and said, "Pack your stuff, we'll leave tomorrow morning to your new family." I cried out loudly when he said this, but I realized that it was going on deaf ears. So, I went to my room, packed my stuff, praying that my new family was less wicked. The next day, Dad drove me to the next town. I don't exactly remember the emotions I was going through, but I wasn't crying. Maybe I was just numb when I was leaving the house and throughout the drive. My new family was indeed poor. They had a tiny house with one room. They had renovated the storehouse into my room. I had no complaints because they at least made an effort to provide me with a room. I never had my own room or a bed. My sisters had a bed and I was put up on a cot at the corner of their room and a tiny closet for my belongings. This room was comparatively smaller than our room, but it was cozy. My new parents, Mary and John, were warm and loving, but I came from a disturbed household. I had never experienced that love. Yes, I saw my parents showering their love on my sisters, but never on me. I used to doubt my new parents' intentions and took their love to be just a temporary one. I tried not to get attached to them because I feared that they might also throw me away. Childhood trauma, you know. It took me many months to realize that they actually loved me and were not putting up a facade. Yes, my school was discontinued that year because my parents moved me here mid-session, but my new parents promised to get me to school next year. I witnessed how they worked extra hard to save money to get me into a school. That's when I started loving them back. My adoption turned out to be a blessing in disguise. My biological parents never showed up after shipping me to Mary and John. Honestly, I was relieved because here I was treated by my original identity as a boy. Mary and John were very hardworking people. They worked for 14 to 16 hours a day for their food truck. The truck was located just outside of their apartment, so I was not left alone when they were working. I could see them right through my bedroom window. Eventually, I started spending my day on the truck helping them with whatever I could. When I got admitted to the school, I gave my full time to studies but helped them with the chores whenever I was free. I was a little over 10 when I helped John at the cash counter. I was pretty good at calculation. I learned business and accounting from a very early age. After high school, I wanted to run their business full time, but they both insisted that I complete my college education first. They funded it with their savings. They were getting too old and weak to run a food truck. I wanted to take their responsibility the way they took mine, but they assured they can manage for a few more years and I should pursue college. I studied business and accounting in college because I ultimately wanted to be an entrepreneur. My graduation day was the happiest day of my life. John and Mary were over the moon. They even asked my biological parents to attend the convocation, but they didn't turn up. After college, I wanted to run the food van and let Mary and John retire, but they had planned something else for me. They had accumulated handsome savings and he handed that over to me. I was overwhelmed with his gesture. He said they can survive on their own for a few more years, but they didn't want to drag me into this. He gave me the money to start a business of my own. I didn't want to blindly waste his money, so I used my business knowledge. I hunted for a small local eatery at a good location that was struggling for sales. I pitched it to the owner to lease out to me on a profit-sharing model. After several rejections, I got one. I started it from scratch, renovated the place and menu according to the millennials and Gen Z's tastes, and gave the best services to the customers. The sales rocketed within a year and I made 2x profit on the investment. 4 years into this and now I have 3 cafes in the town running successfully. I upgraded Mary and John to a better apartment. I got a tiny place for myself. I had been living with them until now. I asked them to get rid of their food truck and enjoy their retirement, but they insisted on continuing it for their happiness. When I left the house with my suitcase, I never imagined myself to be a college graduate, but here I am running restaurant chains in the town. Fast forward to last month, it was a usual day at work. I was busy at the cash counter of one of the restaurants when I saw a familiar face. I felt as if I saw a ghost. It was my biological father. I was seeing him after almost 2 decades. He looked pale and weak. He walked with a wide smile across the counter and hugged me. There were customers in the store, so I didn't say anything and took him to the corner. His face brought back all the harrowing memories of my childhood. I wouldn't have been able to write such details about my past if they didn't reappear in my life. He said he was so happy and proud to see me successful in life. I didn't know what to say, I stood there numb. He said he was passing by and met John, who told him about my successful venture. He said he would get my mom on the weekend. I didn't say anything and he left shortly after that. After wrapping up my day, I went to John and told him that I didn't want to meet my biological parents who disowned me for being a boy. They knew about my distressed childhood. I wanted to run away and hide somewhere on the weekend, but Mary insisted that I forgive my parents and move on. I agreed to meet them on the condition that Mary and John should be present with me. So, my biological parents arrived at John's house. I thought they would apologize for what they did to me, but I tell you they had zero remorse. Instead, they counted the favors on me. Mom said I should be thankful to them that they found such good parents for me who raised me to be a successful individual. I was shocked to hear that. I wanted to give it back to them, but Mary held my hand, gesturing to me to calm down. I diplomatically said I'm blessed to have John and Mary as my parents. I can describe the meeting as awkward for me. The next day I got a call from my mother. I didn't recognize her voice. How would I? It was the first time she had called me in 20 years. It was a demand for money. She said that Dad had lost his regular job and had been working on a contractual basis for years now. She had also lost her job because apparently, no restaurant needs a 50-year-old waitress. It was difficult for them to make ends meet. I asked how much she needed and she said $20 grand would suffice. She had borrowed that money from her friends over the last few months to run the groceries at the house, and now her friends were asking for the money back and she had none. I hung up the call saying, I think about it and get back. Now the thing is, no matter how much I hate them, I feel bad that people are chasing them for money. Sometimes, I feel she's just exploiting me, but what if they genuinely need help? I'll feel bad for letting them go through the embarrassment even though I had the money. Update 1. Thanks for all the comments and kudos. I got quite mixed reactions from the people regarding helping out my mom with $20,000. I then discussed it with Mary and John. Mary was happy that I was considering helping my parents, but she also cautioned me to be vigilant. John said it was my money, so I should take the decision. He also had the same fear as me, that what if they were trying to misuse my emotions? After thinking a lot about it, I agreed to take this first and last bet on my biological parents, and made the transfer to her account. I did feel good that I was able to help out my family even though they were mean to me, but I was wrong. Perhaps, I should say I was right because I dreaded they were gonna exploit me financially, and they are indeed trying to. A week after sending the money, Mom called me again. I responded with mixed feelings. She thanked me for the help and then she said, "Your sisters want to meet you, so when do you think you can make it?" At that moment, I really felt that my family wanted me back. I know my parents wronged me when I was a kid and I hated them, but I never hated my sister. Maybe as a small kid, I would have done some evil things to them, but after I grew up, I never held them responsible. It wasn't their fault. Sometimes, I even thought that my parents got rid of me because they were poor and not because they were evil. I told Mom that we could meet on the coming Sunday and that I could drive home. She interjected saying, "Why don't we meet somewhere outside?" I didn't think a lot about this and I just said okay. She said she would text the location and time details in some time. After I hung up, I felt this uneasiness, like why she didn't want me to visit home. I mean, yes, it doesn't matter where you meet, but still, meeting your family after so many years, don't you think you would call them home instead of meeting them at a restaurant? Nevertheless, she sent me the details of the restaurant and it was one of the fanciest restaurants in town. I didn't think much at that time because my mind was stuck at the point that they didn't invite me home. I went to the restaurant. They were already there. My sisters rushed to hug me. For a moment I was happy to see them after so many years. I was having fun catching up with them until the menu came and they started ordering the food. They deliberately were looking for the priciest food. When they asked my father what he wanted, he just grinned and said, "Order the most expensive one, my son is a big man now." That was so petty of him to say that. Had John or Mary said this, I would have been a proud son, but this coming from my biological parents was mean and wicked. There was nothing I could do. I sat there, watching them gorging over the food, plundering my wallet. Yes, I paid the bill too. There were very wild thoughts running in my mind, like ghosting them before the bill, but that would have been too severe for them. I pledged right there never to get into their emotional trap again. I was cold for the rest of the evening and I bet they didn't notice it. While leaving also, they didn't invite me home. Instead, my elder sister asked, "So where are we dining next?" I faked a smile and said, "Nowhere," and waved them goodbye. I came back and told Mary about my greedy family. She was shocked to know that. She's a very kind and independent woman. She found all these to be very disturbing. She advised me not to be a fool again and also not to think too much about them and to focus on my life. I did that. My sisters called me after a week or so, but I didn't respond to them. My mother also called me, but I didn't respond. It's been 2 months since then and now they stopped texting or calling me. I think they got my hint that I didn't want them in my life. Update 2. Hello everyone. Thanks for all the love. As I mentioned in my last post, I stopped responding to my sisters and my biological parents because I understood they wanted me only for the money. Almost after 5 months, yesterday, she called me again. I saw the phone ringing and I answered it impromptu. She began with small talk, asking about me and my work. It sounded so fake and pretentious that I couldn't bear it. I asked her what did she want. She took a deep breath and said my sisters had to drop out of college because dad couldn't pay their tuition fees. So, they wanted me to fund their college education. I flipped out. She asked me to calm down and said they were my sisters, my family, and I should help them. I was at work at that time and didn't want to mess up my head, so I hung up. She called me again in the evening. I ignored the call a few times, but it was bothering me. Ignoring was not the solution, I realized. The next time she called, I answered. She asked, "Your sisters are very excited to rejoin their college. So, how are we going about it? Will you be paying at one shot or semester-wise? I suggest you transfer the whole amount to me and I will pay the tuition before each semester. You don't need to take the trouble." I was like, "Whoa, hold on lady. I'm not gonna make any payments." She was so surprised. She didn't expect no to be an answer. She asked, "What do you mean? You don't want to pay it a shot? It's fine, we can manage in installments as well." I repeated, "I don't want to pay it in either way. My elder sister's education is not my responsibility, especially when my parents had abandoned me and never checked up on me. Even now, you guys are talking to me just because you could leech on my money." She was boiling with anger and lost her mind at my words. She said, "Don't you forget that we birthed you. Whatever you are is because of us. Your dad found a good guardian for you, and now when it's your time to repay us, you cannot shy away from your responsibilities. Your sisters and your parents are your responsibilities and you have to take care of all of us." I had a lot to say, but it was just falling on deaf narcissistic ears. So I just said, "Well, yes, I do owe a lot to my parents, that is John and Mary, they deserve all the credit for success. And for you guys, I don't know who you are. None of my documents have your name, nor do I have any photographs with you folks, so I don't think I know you all." She was hurling abuses at me, but I said, "Wrong number, lady," and hung up. Now, whatever you call me, selfish, cruel, or whatever, I'm not going to shower my hard-earned money on my so-called family. They were never my family. They got rid of me when I was just 6. And yes, I got comments in my last updates that I called John and Mary by their names and not mom and dad. Actually, I do call them mom and dad, not immediately after coming to them, but when they got me to school and worked hard to provide for my needs and loved me, I got attached to them and called them mom and dad. For the sake of narrating the things here, I referred to them by their names. John and Mary are my actual mom and dad, and for my biological parents, I don't call them anything, they don't exist for me. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Found out my wife cheated on me with her app she met at a convention, so I exposed both of them. My wife and I got married about 5 years ago. The two of us hit it off super well, and we always loved to do nerdy things together. She and I were both gamers. We loved anime and sharing our love of nerd culture with each other. She meant the world to me, and I always thought things were good. We fell in love really fast, about 3 years before we got married. In fact, I met her at a convention, and I thought that we would be a match made in heaven. We started off talking about our love for Legend of Zelda, to even discussing the latest One Piece chapter. Some people look for the one, they're player 2, they're everything. For me, that was her. We got married a little fast and had this really nerdy wedding where we even encouraged people to dress up. However, we didn't get a chance to go to conventions. Due to our jobs and how much they cost, we rarely had a chance to. However, I wanted to make our 5-year anniversary special. I didn't make a lot of money, but I made enough to take care of her. I surprised her for her birthday with tickets to one of the biggest Comic Cons out there. It was one that people dreamed of going to. She was ecstatic, and I was so excited to go. Now, I never did well with women. In fact, I could never really pick up when they actually liked me until after. It was only after the fact that I realized it. Even with my wife, it took me 3 long conversations on Discord to realize that she had the hots for me and wanted to get to know me better. When we went to the convention, things were great. A gal dressed as slave Princess Leia kept gushing over my stormtrooper costume that I put together at the last minute. After she left, my wife pulled me to the side, talking about how that gal was all over me. I told her I didn't even realize it. I was so bad about reading the room that I didn't pick up the signs. My wife was a little bit frustrated, but we continued on with our day. It was a 3-day convention, after all. We went to this meetup, and that's when he came in. He was dressed as Han Solo. My wife, who was also dressed as Princess Leia, started talking to him. The two of them started talking a lot more, getting closer. I stepped in and mentioned I was the husband. The guy said it was nice to meet me but refused to make eye contact. After he left, I confronted my wife. She said there was nothing going on and he was just a nice guy that liked my outfit. She was the bigger Star Wars fan, so naturally, she liked gushing out. I brushed it off, thinking it was nothing. The weekend continued. The next day, my wife woke up sick and exhausted. I said that I would go down and be back later on. I left, but part of me couldn't shake what happened the other night. I chalked it up to maybe my own imagination. However, my wife wasn't answering my messages. We still had one more day before the end of the convention. I bought her something to give to her after I got back up. When I approached the room, I heard sounds. Moans and such. I dismissed it, thinking it was maybe my wife. When I opened the door, I saw her there, looking at me. It was clear she did something. I confronted her, but she said that there was nothing. I looked around, trying to find someone, but there was nothing. I dismissed it. The convention passed. My wife grew distant. She worked longer hours and came home exhausted. I asked if she wanted to watch a movie together, but she would tell me that she was busy. I couldn't shake the moans that I heard. While my wife showered, I saw her Discord notifications were turned off. She never turned these off during the duration of our relationship, so something was amiss. I opened her phone, surprised that the passcode was the same, and I began to read them. They were messages from the guy that she met at the Star Wars meetup. He kept flirting with her, and they exchanged pictures. He even mentioned he wanted to roleplay with her, and she was all about it. I angrily set the phone down and pretended like I never saw anything. My wife asked me if anything was wrong, and I lied and said I was fine. However, it was not fine. I researched how to get a divorce. This would be quite hard to serve, but I wanted to humiliate her and show her that I knew everything. I told her about another convention and how I wasn't going to be able to make it to this one, but she could go. Her eyes lit up slightly, even though we wouldn't be together. This was my partner, someone that I wanted to be with forever, who just tossed me away. It was a gut punch, but I couldn't let her on. On the day of the convention, I followed my plan. I did some research on this guy. They actually worked pretty closely together. I went to the convention and found them, of course, right in front of her favorite voice actors. That's when my plan came in. I watched them get in line and hid behind them. I wore a mask to hide my face but watched them like a hawk. When they got closer, the voice actor asked her about how she was. She pulled the man closer and said she was having a great day. They shared a kiss, and then, that's when I made my plan. I moved right in between them, pulling off the mask and looking directly at my wife. She dropped her hand and looked at me. She asked what I was doing. I argued with her, saying that I caught her with him and that he cheated on me with him. She said that wasn't true, but I got the Discord messages, putting them right down on the table. The other attendees watched, shocked that I would even do something like this. However, I didn't want to let this go. I announced to everyone there that my wife was a cheater, and she cheated on me with this guy, whom she also met at a convention. The celebrity stood up, said that he needed a break, and then disappeared. My wife's eyes filled with tears, and she begged me to listen to her. However, I couldn't. I told her that she lied to me, saying she was going alone. I told her that I knew about them meeting up, about the late nights at the office gaming with the girls. I called them one day and asked. They said they didn't hear a thing about a gaming night since they were busy preparing for the holidays. My wife stood there, embarrassed. She told me that she wanted an open relationship and thought about asking me. I told her that I didn't want to listen to this. She was upset as well that I stepped in like that. However, I knew that she had messed up. We got home, and I grabbed my things, staying at a hotel. I grabbed all of my things and contacted an attorney so that we could get the paperwork ready to be filed. She tried to convince me to stay and that we should have an open relationship. She tried to say that I could sleep with other women and she could sleep with men. I never wanted that. I wanted her. She was my player too, my everything. My actions got traction. Someone recorded me embarrassing my wife and showed it all over social media. I proceeded with the divorce, and I got the house and all our things. I sold it, though, because I didn't want to be reminded of the painful memories of the time we shared together. I don't know what happened to my wife. The nerd scene knew all about this, and it was a huge stink on Twitter and other places for a while. Her boss eventually found out because of what they saw, and I'm not sure if she stayed or not. Frankly, I don't care. My quest for love continues, but not with a cheating woman like her.